Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the World Sprint Championship and welcome to what is going to be a pretty interesting round. Of course, joined by none other than Max. Good to see you, buddy. How we doing?
Everybody, pleasure to be back once again. I can't wait for this evening's action here at the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps. But yeah, I'm good, Ben. How are you on this Wednesday evening?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Looking forward to the racing that we've got ahead of us. Now, we are going to be coming out of practice and into qualifying in just a short moment for our races. But the most important question stands as we have multiple stories currently building up over the course of the season. Who's going to be taking those championship titles? We've got Nepoteket on the defense from Bouquet and Hypercar. We've got the LMP2s, which is currently held strong by Roland Sux, with Richard Cook coming up to try and challenge for that 20-point gap. And then we have LMGT3s, courtesy of Lehtinen, who, while despite not being here last round, still has a resounding lead of, I believe, that is, if I do my commentator maths, that is 36 points. So, who should we be keeping an eye on going into tonight's round, Max? That's the question.
That is the big question. I mean, you got to look at that big three in the hypercar standings, of course. Nepoteket, Bouquet, and Pertouche. They're all there vying for that title. Close between Bouquet and Nepoteket, with Mika just being that outside threat. But we saw last time out how, even though he didn't get that win, he was so comfortable leading out in front. It was just those split-second decisions that cost him dearly. And then, I mean, you've also got to look at the LMGT3 division, with the likes of Jordan 40, who isn't actually here tonight, but Jordan Biddle is someone who can make a claim after a strong second place last time out. Could he then go to the forefront and take that victory to boost his championship charge even more? It's all to play for, and of course that Lovrek versus Sux battle in LMP2 is certainly one we need to keep an eye on for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, and it's one that we definitely will be doing so, as the drivers are now making their way out for a 10-minute quali stint. We're on board with Iro, one of the drivers who currently holds true in the LMGT3 class, and one thing that stood out personally for me is drivers' car choices, and I want to talk about that a little bit more tonight, as we've had some drivers who, of course, as we talked in some of the interviews last week about, made some dramatic changes to their car choice, and some have benefited greatly. But I think Iro, who we were on board with a moment ago, as we switched gears to watch Henrik de Vries, he's one that hasn't quite had the same success.
No, he certainly hasn't. He's just not been at the pace of the forerunners. I mean, a highest finish of 6th place so far this season. He's got that twice in both rounds 4 and 5 of the season. But then if you then relate that to both Biddle and 40, who only a couple weeks ago, or should I say last week, made that switch over to of course, over to the Mustang, and that's worked really well into their favour as well. So it's all about how these drivers essentially gel with the car, as we, of course, heard from Alistair Ramsey last week, who also made that switch over to the Mustang. He prefers those front-heavy cars, the ones with a bit more understeer, and they get the power from the front of the car, whereas for Zuri, even though he has swapped to that Mercedes, he may like it as such, but he could be more interested in focusing on using a rear-powered car, like a McLaren or a Corvette, where the balance is all at the rear, you don't have that understeer, you have more oversteer, and that could help him in the long run. But yeah, he's really not gelled to this Mercedes so far this season.
Well, I respect the experimentation, and while he has had a history of driving cars that tend to be mid or even rear-engined in other competitions, as you can see right there, the rear axle being a bit lively with him, and he struggles to keep it under control. Now, that Mercedes AMG, it is a very lively car. It likes to step the rear out, and it does go over a bit of a cliff edge when it comes to grip. You can set that car up to really lean into some of those corners, but you can just as quickly step out the tail if you don't know how to control it. So I think it is going to be a case of how your driving style matches up with the car. And I think, at least from the evidence we've seen so far, he prefers a car that is a little bit, as we saw with the Mustang switch from Ramsey, a little bit more understeery, a little bit more planted, because then he has the confidence in the platform.
Yeah, he certainly does. Indeed, and we also just see down that well also with that Mercedes as well. It's very light on the downforce. It doesn't have, especially on the front end, it doesn't have too much front end downforce to it. It's very much a rear downforce heavy car, so it just enhances that understeer even more. It's quite heavy as well. It's with a longer wheelbase compared to some of the other cars too, like we see with the Mustang. It's just a little bit of a boxy, big, and just overall uncomfortable car to drive. And you need a certain driving style to unlock it, and that's what Ira Vizuri, I think, is slowly getting to grips with. He's slowly getting to that point, but it's taken him quite a while to be able to understand that driving style, because it's so unique to activate the likes of the Mercedes and the Mustang quite quickly. And if you see from someone like we saw with Alistair Ramsey, who's already been in a front-engined Aston Martin, he's used to somewhat bringing that driving style in. So he already had a stepping stone to go off. But for Zuri, I think he actually moved from a McLaren in the GT3 challenge, or potentially a BMW. So he has had potential. If it was the BMW, he has had some front-engine cars to deal with, but that BMW is a completely different beast to that Mercedes.
Yeah, fundamentally different cars, fundamentally different schools of thinking. But we're starting to get a bit of a gauge on the rest of the field now as the first hypercars and LMP2s make their way to the line. Nepotech leads with a 2-minute .865 and then 209.1 from Richard Cook. Championship challenger is going to lead that blue number gap. You've got Richard Vickers coming through with a good showing, as he has made himself now into 4th place, as I believe he was just undercut by Weisrock.
Yes, Weisrock now just in front of Vickers in that standings. Nepotech is about half a second clear of Matteo Bouquet. Of course, can only really get 3 runs around this circuit, depending on what class you are in, of course, here, Ben, because it's such a long circuit, being 7 kilometers long, that a lap by itself, especially even in the hypercars, it's a 2-minute lap time. So, including your out lap, you're only going to get three goes at this to be able to pull things off. And for Nepotech, he's doing everything he needs to do thus far. But Bouquet's not too far off, and around a circuit like this, time can be found literally anywhere. And expect the times to be somewhat more distant than what we've seen at the likes of Portimao, where the lap times are quite a bit shorter than we see here in Spa.
There's a lot more variation in the track surface, and there's a lot more variation in terms of what can go right and wrong. Spa is a very unique beast of a track. You've got everything from sharp hairpins all the way to flying chicanes, and then larger medium to high speed corners alongside some smaller snaps and chicanes like the bus stop that we just saw De Vries head his way through. The point is, it's a test of everything. So you might do really well in Sector 2, or you might pull it out of the bag with an overtake into the Kemmel Straight come race time. And it's about how you set up your car. Have you set it for lap time? Have you set it for combat? Top speed or cornering ability? Defense or offense? That's a lot of variation to consider. And why I don't think, and I very rarely say this, but qualifying doesn't tell half the story that you think it does, especially around here.
It certainly doesn't, because it's so difficult, as you mentioned, to set a car up for this track. Because you got the long straights of Blanchimont, Rouge and Raidillon, and then the Kemmel Straight in those first and final sectors, where you need to be very light on the downforce. You don't want anything dragging you back. But then you got that middle sector to contend with. It's tight, it's technical, it's twisty, and it just then switches the whole dynamic. So, as you mentioned, do you go for that downforce? Do you go for a car that's very quick through the corners? Or do you focus on that straight line speed for the races? Because straight line speed, perfect for qualifying. It is exactly what you need. Go low downforce, absolutely dominate the competition over one lap. But in the race, you're on a high, heavy fuel load on some tyres that can be wearing constantly. It then plays a bigger challenge. You start to see yourself completely lose performance and lose pace. And it's just one of the big tricky things you find around here at Spa is what you go for. And if you do go for low downforce, you could see yourself falling back in the race.
Yeah, I think there's a certainly balancing act to be considering here. You put too much into that top-end speed, you have a great attacker when it comes to places like the Kemmel Straight and the bus stop chicane. You're able to get that top end and really lean into the slipstream to get the moves done. But on the flip side, your actual lap time is going to be a lot lower, or a lot higher, I should say, and you won't be able to necessarily defend the moves that you've just tried to secure. I mean, Bouquet's making his way around now, 0.2 of a second he needs to improve here. Does look like he could have that coming out the back of Sector 2, but can he link it up during the bus stop chicane? Final 90 seconds here in quali, so we're looking at most of the cars now having to contend with and consider the fact that this might be their last chance. It's a 2:01.5 for Bouquet here. Is he going to go for it again, or is he calling it time?
It looks like he is calling it time, has really backed off into that first corner, so it's all down to Mika Patouche, who's 7 tenths back from Sebastian Nepotsekit on his lap time in the LMP2 category. Everybody but Richard Vickers and Roland Sux have called it quits. No, Richard Vickers has now called it quits, so Sux will be on pole position in that division. And the same could be said for Adam Rios, who's only 2 tenths clear of Eero Fazuri, so the 2 Mercedes drivers will be squabbling it out for that pole position. But for Mika Patouche now heading through into that middle sector, he's around about a 10th down from
Rios
his
has spun.
previous best. Oh, Rios. What's happened to Rios, Ben?
He spun out of the bus stop chicane, just a little bit too much power. He was down on the time anyway, so eyes on Vasuri. Can he make something happen? It's just slightly behind by a couple of tenths. Last hope is Wilson, who's slightly up on the delta, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to cross that threshold and get past Eero.
I don't think it will be, as he now heads up through Blanchimont. He's around about a 10th quicker than his previous margin, and that will not even promote him up a place past Eero Fazuri as we now head into the bus stop chicane a little bit deep into there, but he's got it slightly better than he did last time around. To say that gets a very poor exit out the corner, and he'll be heading up to the line and just be hemorrhaging time all the way there, and he will stay third fastest, exactly a second behind Adam Rios. Mika Patouche, what's he doing on his lap? He's around about 6 tenths down from his previous best, so he won't be finding that improvement to get past Nepotsekit. So in LMP2 and Hypercar, it's back to status quo with Sux taking that LMP2 pole position just like we saw last time out. But for Nepotsekit, it's a long-awaited return to the top. He's been in a little bit of bother over the past couple rounds as the championship leader in the Hypercar division. His perfect streak came to an end. Then he got a second place. When that perfect streak came to an end, he got a second place and then a third place last time out in Portimao. He's looking to change the fortunes. And at a circuit, Ben, where I said he could change it around because it's completely different to both Brazil and Portimao.
Yep, there's a lot more to the circuit. There just is a lot more circuit, let's be bluntly honest here. And within that larger scope, that larger canvas, lies opportunity. Opportunity that I hope he seizes. So, 5 hypercars, 5 LMP2s, and 4 GT3s adorn our circuit today, as we have got quite the roster set up for you. It's going to be a bit of an all-stars round tonight, as we have got still some of the top flight talent who are going to be going tooth and nail for championship positions as qualifying has come to a close. Nepotsekit is seeming to have a return to form after a shaky run last time out, getting 3rd place. His weakest result so far, still a podium, but it is a downgrade for him, and hopefully this might be a chance to pull things back. Meanwhile, Roland Sux continues to be on the defensive. He's got the championship to rely on and depend on, and with his results track hopefully staying high, the question is who is going to come out on top further down below him, Cook or Lovric. Thomas has been trying to push and make up for lost time, having missed 2 rounds, but continually getting no lower than 2nd place in this season. Meanwhile, on the GT3s, it's a little bit thinner tonight, but that's not going to stop the fireworks from going, as we do have a shootout between Rios, Basuri, Wilson primarily, and they all have some key points that they could gain out of tonight's round. So let's go through your starting order in full as everyone starts to get to the track. Front row, front and centre, Nepotekit alongside the Peugeot of Matteo Bouquet in the first. Then, row 2, it's going to go to the 2 Ferraris of Patush and Hendrik de Vries, followed smoothly by Sebastian Borgerson, and then the Porsche of Marco Gelino. That's your hypercar grid, and then coming off of that, it's Roland Sux and Thomas Loverick in row 4. Row 5 is going to go to none other than Richard Cook and Alexis Wiesrock. And then we get to the double digits. P11, it's going to be Richard Vickers alongside Timothy Goyer and Wyatt Spencer to complete our registered LMP2 grid before moving on to Adam Rios in the Mercedes AMG, leading the charge in 14th for GT3. It's Eero Vasuri in the other Mercedes alongside Dan Wilson in the BMW, and closing things off with the Mustang registered for Jordan Biddle. So that's where our set lies, and we've got quite a top-tier set of talent joining us on the track today. I'm very excited to see what Nepotekit does to try and bring himself back from that P3 finish last time.
Yeah, so am I, of course. I did mention last time that it could be a change of fortunes for Nepotekit, and that's because Portimao in Brazil, especially that middle sector, it's all very slow, long corners, and it seems that Porsche just doesn't like that style of corner, and that's why he's had the two poor, well, they're not really poor results, but poor by Nepotekit standards of the second and the third. And you can see that as well in the middle sector here in qualifying. It's about 3 tenths behind on Matteo Bouquet, and that's all because, especially at the start of that middle sector, heading down into the Bruxelles hairpin into the Jackie X curve, they're very slow corners, and especially the Bruxelles hairpin, it feels like an eternity to get back onto the power. But we are going now to the green flag. It will be Nepotekit and Bouquet on the front row of the grid in the favour of the Porsche driver, but we know the Peugeot is not afraid of an opening lap attack. So as they head up now with Hendrik de Vries and Mika Patush following just behind them, and Sebastian Borgensen in 5th. We are just waiting for that green flag command. Can Nepotekit hold on to that race lead? Oh, that run down into the com just be too much. And here we are then to that start-finish line, and we are green here in Spa. And it seems to be a very nice launch there from Sebastian Nepotekit as we head into turn 1. But Bouquet late on the brakes, locking those rear tyres. The car dancing as the rears just try and undulate round on him. But you can see now heading down the hill into a Rouge and Rally on there side by side. Now heading into the quickest part of the circuit, and for Bouquet, he just has to sit behind for now, but that slipstream effect he can now have down the Kemmel straight into the com. Can it work out into his favour? Onto the back of the Porsche driver, you can see the snake starting to form as they try to break the toe from the car behind, and here comes Patush now to the inside line, not able to get the move done, and it's a dream start so far for Nepotekit, but now we're hitting his weakest sector on the circuit.
I wouldn't call it a dream start considering the amount of pressure he's under already. Bouquet and Patush pulling no punches in this opening sector of the race. Looks like we have got a bit of chaos as Loverick is off, coming out of the Kemmel straight and into Lecombe. Looks like he just overcooked it a bit, or there was a little bit more drama at plays. It looks like Dan Wilson is trying to chase the other two GT3s currently on the circuit, but all eyes return to the hypercars as Bouquet is sending a mission statement out there to Nepotekit tonight. He's making it clear that you may be the championship defender, but by no means are you out of the woods. Those 3 points, I am coming for them.
Certainly is indeed, as Patush goes a little bit wide out of Campus corner. So we head into Stavolo and then curve the Paul Freya for Matteo Bouquet. He knows he's got to stick with Nepotekit here, but he's got to make sure his engine and his tyres stay quite cool, because he does not want anything to start overheating. And around Spa, that will cost you dearly, especially engine temperatures, because you need so much power down these straights. And that's where potentially that Peugeot might just be lacking ever so slightly. It's not one of the quickest cars in a straight line, and he'll probably be really suffering at the end of the first sector. But Patush sits behind. I think this is the closest we've seen all five drivers over the course of an opening lap here, Ben, in the hypercar field. As for Bouquet, I think he's just trying to set this one up over the next few laps.
Yeah, it's just trying to set those cards down, build up his deck, and eventually he'll be able to play his hand. I don't think it's wise to go so hard head rushing in and just going all guns blazing. I don't think that's the right call. Round Spa, you want to play for time. You want to set yourself up to get an optimal overtake because there's plenty of track to work with. You might as well set yourself up for something like the Kemmel Straight. But saying that, looks like there is a massive interval or some kind of issue. Oh, nope, that is a timing error. My mistake there. But even so, you've got a lot of drivers now just trying to gauge where they want to land their car.
Yes, they certainly do. They're just going to build into the rhythm at the start of this race, make sure they understand not only the circuit but the car itself. Yes, they may have done practice, but the conditions, of course, constantly evolve over the course of an hour and 15 minutes. You can see just a little bit wide there was Mathieu Bouquet, just showing how hard he's pushing once again through Pouon as well. He really is pushing this one, and De Vries really wide there, all the way off the road, and no, rejoining after Pouon corner. So that was a real big error there for Hendrik De Vries. And Richard Vickers, he got a drive-through penalty for potentially some either overspeeding or erratic driving on that way to the line. So he's now got a big task on his hand. The same with Thomas Lovrek too. They've both had disastrous starts in the LMP2 categories.
Yeah, it looks like Vickers has been knocked down a peg as well after Lovrek made the first mistake in that class. Vickers is going to be following suit and is now in a similar situation where Lovrek found himself moments ago, trying to get himself past the GT3s, get through the traffic and get himself back into terra firma. But looks like he might be contending with a bit of damage, as despite making a smooth run out at the end of the second sector, it doesn't seem like he's all that confident in the car there.
No, I don't know if he had to give the place back either to, of course, that was Ira Vazuri, but now gets past Adam Rios. I don't know if he would have had to give the place because he did get it over the track limits. He went off the circuit to get it done, so he might have got a slowdown penalty for it, but he does seem a little bit shaky so far at the start of this, even when trying to pass Adam Rios there on the inside of the curve of Paul Freire. Just seemed a little bit hesitant to do so, as that gap at the front of the field is starting to extend. It's 1 second now between Bouquet and Nepoteket. This time at last lap it was 6 tenths. So the Porsche drivers found about 4 tenths, but of course still a long old way to go. Anything can happen, and we know Bouquet here, Ben. We know he's smart with the strategy. He knows exactly what to do in the pit stops, and in the past 2 races, it's won him both races. So he certainly is one to look out for. No, not really when it comes to overtaking on the circuit, but more with those mind games and the strategic moves.
I think this is definitely Nepoteket's race to lose right now. He's, by all counts, got everything to play for. As we have had a DNF, just had a confirmation. Lovrek has DNF'd out of the race after yet another issue. I think just calling it time out here in Spa. Hopefully he returns with a bit of a vengeance when we come out to this one and into Qatar. But yeah, shame to see. First DNF of the night. We're down to 4 LMP2s.
Yeah, that's really disappointing to see now, especially with, of course, how short this race has been. It's been very short-lived so far, and to already fall at this stage of the race for Lovrek, he'll be missing out on some crucial points. And that really now, Ben, does give the upper hand to Roland Sux, not only in this race, but in the championship as well. And he'll be looking into these final few rounds that we will have as really now putting one hand on that trophy and just needs to be consistent till the end.
I think the big thing here is just going to be consistency. It's about not being brash, not being one to rush into moves. I think that has been the undoing of many a racer at this circuit, not just here in WSC, but in general. So I think right now, I mean, look at De Vries. He is, yes, behind by a margin on Patouche, but I think his stable approach is going to still net him big points out of tonight. Just don't take unnecessary risks. The smaller grid means that you're guaranteed a much higher points pool, but it's all about bringing it home. You've got to make it home to get the points, and that's the linchpin in this whole operation.
It certainly is, of course, especially in that LMGT3 category for Zuri, Rios, and also Wilson. This will be probably their best result of the season if everybody else joins back with it. Well, of course, everybody else will join back soon, but this will be their best result of the season. They can score some big, valuable points to the standings and see themselves shoot from 15th all the way up into potentially the top 7 because of that race victory or a podium position. So for these drivers, they know it's a very big moment for them, and even if they are 2 laps down, say in Dan Wilson's case, he goes 2 laps down to both Rios and Fazuri, he's still going to score a podium amount of points. So it does not matter in his case. He'll finish the race and get a big chunk of points, and that is exactly what they're all looking at this evening. It's Hendrick de Vries, a real big moment out of Stabilo, getting onto the gravel, lucky to keep that car facing in a straight line.
Yeah, but he still kept it together, and I think he may be getting a little bit conscious of the gap between himself and de Vries, although that is going to be a stark contrast as Borgerson barely able to hold the car together. You can see he's practically crabbing sideways, that Ferrari barely holding it together, and almost looking like he's drifting constantly. Oh, Suit! Yeah. And now Cook having to get past him. Wiesrock also going to be coming up quick. But such an unpredictable car is very dangerous to have on circuits. He smashes through one of the sponsor boards, and he's barely able to bring it down the road.
He certainly is indeed, and it looks like he's got immense rear-end damage to that Ferrari hypercar. And that's why it's dancing so much down the straight. I don't think it's suspension damage as of yet, but it's just a way, just a small movement, even a bump of the car will send it into pretty much a spin at this point. And to be fair, congratulations to Borgensen from getting this one all the way up the hill into pit lane, because he's not been able to smash it into any walls, and he's had some superb car control as well. But for Borgensen, I think he's still going to carry on and finish this one. But that surely is going to be the end of his challenge for at least top 4.
Yeah, I think the main thing for the drivers here is, even if you have a dire session, just bring it home, because you're going to have so much more benefit by bringing it back. And you can see he's made it to the box, even after having such difficult rear end issues, because with a knock like that, you're going to be putting power down basically sideways. So any kind of power application, your rear just wants to kick and make you face the other way. So good credit for that. Well done. Managed to make it back. And hopefully he's able to recover the car and just be able to finish the race today. P5 is still a massive points haul, and I think that's what he's got to consider.
Yeah, he certainly does. So for Borgensen, yeah, very well done for getting that one back to pit lane and not actually spinning out all the way up the hill through Blanchimont. He did really well there as Nepoteke. It's all about the hypercars. He's built that gap now to 1 point. It was 1.3 just before we hit the brakes into the bus stop chicane, but Bouquet slowly is brought it back through there. The Porsche definitely struggles through the corners, I think, here, Ben. It's certainly a car that isn't really made for the corners. It's not one that is highly likes the quick change of direction. It's not agile enough. Compare that to the Peugeot, though. The Peugeot seems extremely planted. The quick change of directions is what it's most styled to. So for the circuits that we've just had of Brazil and Portimao, exactly what it needed. But here at Spa, it's a little bit of a different challenge, and that's why we're seeing Nepoteke quicker down the straights, just being able to eke out this lead lap over lap, even if it's a 10th or 2 as each lap ticks by.
Yeah, I remember, well, just remember anyway, with what we said earlier about setups, I wouldn't be surprised if Nepoteke has set up his car almost in a counter configuration to be a bit lower downforce, purely for the sake of defense, countering Bouquet trying to make moves into somewhere like the Kemmel Straight or the bus stop chicane. Having a bit more of the top end might be able to fend him off and keep him at bay. So Nepoteke, he's still holding really good pace and managing to peel out, particularly on the exits of some of these corners. But even so, I think he's benefiting from a little bit of a lower drag setup in general.
Yeah, I think he certainly is. Of course, you can use that to the advantage. Of course, you use the strengths of your car, and if you go for even lower downforce, he's utilising that so well because he's going to be so fast down those straights. And then for Bouquet, as you mentioned, he'll be looking for the corner rotation, maybe a bit more drag onto the car, and using that to help carry his challenge for this race victory. He has seemed to have clawed some back over the course of this lap. He's clawed back about 2 to 3 tenths of a second. You can just see he slowly hemorrhages that time all the way up the hill through Blanchimont. It was 1.1, so he gained 2 tenths of a second this time around onto the back of Sebastian Nepoteke. And could that potentially be also Nepoteke of course, having lower downforce of the car, not being made for corners, those tyres will wear more because you're sliding across the track surface a lot more as well here, Ben. Could there be some tyre wear dramas coming the way of the Porsche driver and just allowing Bouquet to just potentially push that little bit more?
We're certainly putting a lot more wear and dependence on the mechanical grip of your car in lieu of having downforce, so definitely something to consider. I think your two schools of tuning that the drivers can follow here, particularly at Spa, and a game of extremes, if you will, is you either build the car or set up the car for the purpose of rounding off the sharp edges of the characteristics. So if you've got a car that you know has great top end but struggles powering out of corners, you've got a lot of medium to high speed corners here at Spa, or at least a lot of high importance ones, so it might be worth dialing in your car to have a bit more of a stable platform. The other school of thinking is that you go all in on those strengths and kind of make your car into a bit of a one trick. You could really go all in on that high speed and fight the car through the higher speed corner sections. It's all about your, again, like we were talking about with Vasuri before, it's your driving style that's going to be the major benefactor in where you make that choice. But looks like the top two are coming up to some traffic, and this could be a big game changer as Bouquet's managed to peel away and has managed to all but consume the lead that Nepoteket has built.
He certainly has. It was just that traffic in the background that we've just seen here. Vasuri run wide, and this is actually allowing Adam Rios to get a run on him here. Up now into Blanchimont and into the bus stop chicane. Are we going to see a switch from the two Mercedes cars? Bouquet has dropped about 6/10 behind on Nepoteket, so of course that straight line speed just not coming to play for the Peugeot driver, but Rios not close enough to make a swap between the two Mercedes cars. But all that traffic as well has invited Dan Wilson back into the picture. He was 2 seconds behind before these hypercars caught up, and now that Rios and Vasuri were in their squabble, he's now onto the back of him. So the three drivers in the LMGT3 class are now all squabbling it out. Is Wilson to the inside of Adam Rios? Is he going to pull this move off on the exit as Vasuri goes wide? As a big moment out of the first corner, out of the source, and we could see free wide into a Rouge and Radion.
Even looks like a little bit of bump drafting coming from the two Mercedes as Vasuri is hopping a little bit around the circuit. I'm not sure if there's a connection issue there, but he seems to be floating around the track more than he is driving on it, maybe putting the other racers on edge, and that has been to the benefit of Wilson, who's got himself alongside and past Rios. He's been demoted all the way to P3. Eros managed to hold on to the position for another day, but the two behind are fighting hard here. Don't count either of them out, as they are very much going tooth and nail, wheel to wheel, all the way out of the first sector into sector 2 down the hill, as that is going to be I believe, De Vries trying to make a bit of an impact there, and contact made between Wilson and Rios. There's going to be a back off from the Mercedes. Good sportsmanship being shown, but someone call air traffic control, because you've got multiple pilots looking to land.
Yes, they certainly are indeed, all fighting for the same piece of tarmac with the hypercars and the LMGT3s. And for Dan Wilson, he was the one that weathered that chaos the best, as he sees himself up into second place in class and splitting the two Mercedes cars. As we see now, Sebastian Nepoteket really starting to come under pressure from Bouquet. The Peugeot not being shaken off this time around as of yet from the Porsche driver's rear end. So for Bouquet, he's really just trying to hustle into this one. I think he's found somewhat of a rhythm, has Mateu, as he now exits out of the bus stop chicane. I think he's now in somewhat of a zone. He knows the lines that Nepoteket takes, and potentially has learned as well from Nepoteket through some of these corners. Yes, they may have different philosophies in the car, but you can somewhat gather where your rival is faster at certain corners, and you try to take their lines. And it just spurs you on to get that little bit of a momentum boost, doesn't it, Ben? To then push yourself even further, and you go even faster over the course of a lap.
You're not just a racer on this track, you're also a tactician, you're also a strategist, you're also your own engineer, unless you got one in your ear. There's a lot that you have to consider, and let's put ourselves in the mind of Bouquet for a second. A little bit of a thought exercise. Right now, he's trying to gauge a few things. For one, he wants to see where Nepoteket is faster versus where he's weaker. See if he can lean into some of those weaknesses and be aware of how to keep him on track for the strengths. Other thing is he wants to get in within proximity while not getting caught up in the heat of the moment. He's got to find that balance between putting on pressure and not compromising his own race. You can see he comes out a no name and very barely able to keep it on the track. He's pushing hard for sure, but he's being mindful and he's not being brash and sudden.
Yeah, he certainly is. Of course, he's just taking care of that car as well. Because, of course, it's still a long old way to go. He's just had nearly 20 minutes go by, still just under an hour left to go in this race. There's still plenty of time for any moves to be made. And for Bouquet, I think he is certainly a very big tactician when it comes to this style of racing. He, of course, in the past 2 races has won it purely off strategy alone. And that's his biggest strength, is the I don't know if he's got an engineer, but if not, it's his mind. It's how he can read 20 to 30 minutes later on into a race, exactly know what he needs to do at the start to then build onto that and to get into that position come when that pit windows happen. So 20 to 30 minutes down the road, he knows exactly what gap he needs to Nepotec in front, what he needs to do throughout the rest of this stint to get to that point, and then come into pit lane to get off these tyres, to put in a new set of fuel. And 9 times out of 10, it's worked into his favour. So for Bouquet, he's a big tactician. It may not be raw speed, but he certainly has the genius for this division.
Well, I certainly say that he's got plenty of speed. He's still holding his own against the others in his class, but you're quite right. The tactician aspect is a very important one to consider. We check in with Vickers as he's currently in the pit box, and a couple of other cars who have had some issues, namely De Vries into the wall at the start-finish line and is seemingly stuck. He's not moving. There's a big problem there for that Ferrari. He's not had a good time, and it looks like things are going to be getting a little bit more difficult. He might be joining Borgerson, fresh out of the pits not long ago, and looking to resurge up towards the top end of the pack again. But De Vries is completely stuck. I could only assume that there's some kind of technical issue.
So would I. Some sort of tech issue, or potentially where the track changes between grass and, of course, the tarmac. He's got slightly beats, but I don't think that's the case. It says he's currently in reverse on the game HUD. So I think there for Hendrik De Vries, it is a technical issue, and we might see him eventually disconnect from this session. So unfortunate there to see for the Dutchman, as he's driven so well in this race thus far. Of course, has never really had the pace of the top 3 this evening or all season long, but we're still getting a healthy 4th place finish. But that is now going to go up in technicality smoke. And unfortunately for him, he certainly is going to be out of this one. And I think in a matter of moments, he'll be disqualified for sitting in the middle of the road.
Yeah, well, he's still off the side of the track, so one could argue that it might not apply, but we'll have to wait and see on that, of course. So hopefully he can get back on his feet, or at the very least he can solve whatever issue he's having, get himself into the pits, and even if he just finishes the race, P5 will still net him, I think it's 18 points. So that is quite a large margin in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully he can get things back up as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Vissuri has had quite a torrid session, at least in this past 5 minutes. It was previously on fighting form, but we saw the connection issues briefly spell a warning for things to come, and it looks like he's had an on-track issue as well to boot. So now currently sitting in P3. Doesn't look like he's going to be recovering anytime soon, as he's just hemorrhaging time all the way down this 3rd sector. The delta's completely non-functional, indicating that there has been packet loss to where the game is no longer able to draw consistent delta values.
Yeah, it does seem that the issues are really... I see there, I think he's just had another big lag spike, and he's nearly around through the bus stop chicane. Tokyo drifting it through the bus stop chicane, should I say, at that
Style
point.
points.
But that was definitely some style points there from Ira Vissuri, just flexing a little bit of car control on everybody here in the race and at home. But Yeah, I think I also saw a little bit earlier on his car lag backwards throughout the him, Wilson and Rios train and fall to the back of it. So unfortunate for Fasura as he gets out of the way of the LMP2s. And I think he's just going to have to settle for third place here because it just seems that, unfortunately, an issue has come his way that isn't his fault at all.
I know that the drivers have been facing a myriad of technical issues, not just the ones on track today, but also the ones that unfortunately couldn't make it. A lot of them are being chalked up to tech issues, so outside of their control. Of course, we are still going to be putting on the championship right to its rightful conclusion, but there is opportunity in those that did make it to the track. I mean, look at Rios and Wilson. They're still duking it out, neck and neck, making their way out and through the second sector. They've got an opportunity here to score big and slingshot themselves up the order just by virtue of them giving it their all and being consistent.
Yes, they certainly are, and of course that, Rios was trying to use Richard Cook as a little bit of a way through on to Dan Wilson. Just nothing being made just yet. As we now head through into Stavolo. And it's Adam Rios still trying to get that position, of course, as you now see. I think that's Wiesrock making his way through, and this could be another opportunity for Rios. That Wilson has to somewhat go wide and nearly into their gravel, heading up through the curve of the Paul Freya. As you can see, Wilson really snapping across to defend that position, but actually goes onto the grass, so even hemorrhaging more time as they head up the hill into the bus stop chicane. And can the Mercedes driver just get close enough to make a lunge to the inside line?
We have got another DNF coming from Vickers in the LMP2, so I think he never truly was able to recover from that pit stop earlier. We saw him in the pits, and that is another LMP2 out of contention. So the grid has thinned somewhat. The race still continues, but the rest of the field, again, has an opportunity to really score big from the ashes of their fallen racers, and for those who couldn't make it tonight, presents opportunity for those that remain. Rios is certainly going to be taking that to heart as he continues his challenge on P2, and likewise with Bouquet, still really going for a challenge on Nepo Tekit, and De Vries is still at the side of the track. The game has not booted him, but he continues to be beached to the point where Borgerson, remember, a lap down, having taken a pit stop, has now overtaken him.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I've just seen in the chat, well, the Discord, should I say, that I think there's been an issue on his end, so he won't be able to come back into this race. And yeah, that car is going to be there for the whole race, it seems, down into turn one. And Bouquet's lost a huge amount of time over the course of this past sector or two. He was about 4 tenths behind coming out of the source, heading up the hill and into Le Com. He's now 1 second behind, so I don't know if he made a mistake potentially up at Eau Rouge and Radion, but they're now catching up to that squabble, of course, between the two LMGT3 leaders and also Sebastian Borgensen as well. So more traffic to come into play, and of course we saw last time around Bouquet was able to really slice down that gap to Nepo Tekit. Is he going to be able to get close enough to actually go for a move this time around?
Yeah, I think that even if he does get close enough to make a move, I don't think it's wise to necessarily go for it. I think the better play here, as we get to the midpoint of the race, is just take your time. Don't go for brash moves, as we've said before, but more importantly, take the time to yield and give some pressure rather than just going outright for the move. It's one thing to make an overtake, it's another thing to keep it, and at Spa there's plenty of opportunities for an overtake to be quickly overturned.
There certainly is indeed. Of course, with Nepo Tekit as well, having that superior straight line speed, we could just see him get him straight back into Eau Rouge and Radion. You can see late on the brakes once more from Bouquet. So much more confident under braking and through the corners. We still have that yellow flag, of course, for Hendrik de Vries, and they really have now caught up to the back of Rios and Wilson. It might actually hold up Nepo Tekit slightly through the source and give Bouquet the opportunity he needs as they exit out of the corner. There goes Nepo Tekit to the inside, flashing the lights as well to Dan Wilson to let him know he's coming through. And Bouquet might actually get held up here slightly. He's to the inside and just was able to scrape through but he had to take a bit of a less optimal line through a Rouge, and that could potentially just hinder him even more in that battle with the Porsche.
A little bit of a wobble, but still, Bouquet holds firm, and that traffic slightly deterred him, but it looks like he's managed to make up most, if not the entire time, as he's currently running even on his Delta. He's teetering around half a second either side of the fence, but he's still keeping it there. Vissuri, unfortunately, has dropped down an entire lap, and it looks like that they are going to be done. Game over. They're in the pit lane, and that typically is a signal of a connection lost, which is often unrecoverable.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's Bouquet now, look at that, 2 attempts behind. He's really using that middle sector to his advantage, but of course, at Spa, and of course it may have the most corners, but not many of them are overtaking opportunities, contrary to other circuits where the middle sector is the overtaking hotspot. And that's what's really just affecting Matteo here, as he's trying his best to challenge in Nepoteket. And I do believe, once again, just like we've seen in the past 2 rounds, it's going to come down to that fuel management that we've seen from Bouquet to go 1 lap extra than the car in front of him and save that crucial 1 second, 2 seconds from that extra lap of fuel that they have to put into their car. So for Matteo Bouquet, it's going to come all down to that once more. And they are actually catching up to the LMP2s as well to finally be able to lap the likes of Wiesrock, Cook and Roland Sux, who's actually really gapped Richard Cook in this one. He's 30 seconds clear and heading through the middle sector, where Cook is just heading up for a Rouge and Radion. Just shows the domination from Sux so far in this race.
Yeah, massive gap between the two, and nigh insurmountable, at least without a major miracle. Sux is continuing to prove why he currently stands tall on those standings. He's just ruthlessly consistent. He hasn't really put any foot wrong, and this could be as much as his 5th win on the championship table. So a C of good results, and that is going to be a tide that just keeps coming in harder and harder. 33 seconds between the two, but let's go to the opposite end of the scale. Bouquet and Nepoteket still going neck and neck as the season is going to draw to a close. He's going to run out of opportunities to go for these last crucial points. He's only got Qatar, Kota and Sebring left in the championship, so I imagine he's feeling the pressure.
Yeah, so do I imagine that. He knows, of course, that he needs to get these moves done. He needs to get those positions gained. And for Bouquet, it's so crucial. Those 3 points are going to be exactly what he needs out of this race. And, of course, with those drop rounds as well, you could have someone like Nepoteket come 2nd place here. And then next time around when they win that race, have that 2nd place. And that actually notches out one of a good result for him. So it then means that he could potentially earn more points from this race if he finishes 2nd than he does from finishing in 1st. So it ebbs and flows, this championship. And with those drop rounds, it does add that little bit of an element as well, that even if you do get a 2nd place, you might get a 1st place back that you got earlier in the season to just counteract that, and you get more points from this race as a whole. So it just really is all about how your drop rounds work and how your performances have been so far this season, and it really does reward that consistency. As Bouquet to the inside of Wiesrock potentially went for the move there on Nepoteket, not able to get it done.
Yeah, you can see a little bit of squabbling as the 3 cars are currently making their way on to Rouge Radion. They were briefly squabbling for space, and I did wonder if Nepoteket was going to get held up, but no, he's in fact turned this into his advantage. Traffic is that interesting multi-class wildcard. It's not in the wildcard in the sense of, as we've seen in the second half of this championship, but a wildcard in terms of how it affects the racers around them. It's all about how they are positioned as to dictate what the effects are on the racers that are trying to pass. A good overtake will net you 0 time loss, but get a slower car right on the apex of a corner when you're trying to go forward, and that's easily half a second lost, just like that.
It certainly is, of course. With this, of course, you're constantly with the traffic in somewhat of a guessing game, and it's really just a roulette of are you going to get held up this time around, or are you going to gain, or is there going to be an incident that happens with a back marker? It's all down to how that traffic functions and where you catch it, just like we're going to see here from Nepoteket and Bouquet. I think they're just going to be a little bit short of Richard Cook, just in front of him by the time they get up into the bus stop chicane, or they might just be able to clear him. Nepoteket at least could be able to, heading up into there. But it's all about where you find that traffic, because now we could see the LMP2 car of Richard Cook separate the pair of Nepoteket and Bouquet. And is there going to be a move to the inside? No. So you can see it holds Nepoteket up. It gives Bouquet that advantage to close that gap really down to, of course, his rival for the championship. But then, once again, down the straight, Nepoteket is able to get by, and then Bouquet has to make that move into the corner, costing him valuable time. But Nepoteket's gone deep, and Bouquet might see the door open for him and give him the prime opportunity.
It's not quite open just yet, but the seeds have been sown. The pressure has been building lap on lap on lap, and as they make their way through Eau Rouge and Bradion now, this could be the start of a turning point for the two, as Bouquet is once again relentless. He is unyielding, and he's tucked neatly to the back of that Porsche's wake as he goes through 0.2 of a second, trying to creep it down. In fact, backing off slightly. He knows he hasn't got the run here on the Camel Straight just yet, but the tone is set, and that small mistake has exposed a gap in the chainmail armor that is Nepoteket's defense.
Certainly is he starting to crumble under that pressure. After, of course, it's been relentless since the start of this race. It's very rarely got above 1 second between the pair. And look how close Bouquet is now into that middle sector. Can't find a move into Pouon with the Frenchman, but he'll be looking to try and get that move done now, potentially into Campus Corner. It's an overtaking opportunity if you are close enough, but no, just not there. And look at the difference. This is mainly due to the cars, of course, being that difference where the Peugeot's quicker through the corners and the Porsche's quicker down the straights. But you saw it exactly there, into Campus Corner, Ben. Just a difference in braking. You could just see the Peugeot is able to go so much later on the brakes that if he does go for a move in the middle sector, Nepoteket doesn't stand a chance from Bouquet.
Yeah, it's that ability to go later on the brakes that's really going to help him with positioning. And that's going to be, I think, what seals the deal. When these two eventually come to blows for one last time before the trade, I think it will be Bouquet's ability to jump on those brakes later, to really position the nose of his car as he gets so close off the back of the bus stop. It will be that key factor, that key difference. Even if the speed isn't quite there, even if the lateral G's, the grip isn't the same between the cars, he'll just be able to get the nose in and almost dart his way into a favourable spot and lock him out of the corner.
Certainly doesn't. It also just shows really the difference in the agility between the two cars and how one can really dance with that front end from apex to apex and the other one really cannot. It has to slow itself down and really come to a stop. And that's where Bouquet, of course, does find that time. Hendrik de Vries, of course, down that main straight. If a move does go happen into the source, he's got a perfect opportunity to watch it all unfold, sitting at the side of the circuit. Needed a Le Mans-style run-up to recover that car. But for Sebastian Nepoteket, he's withstanding the pressure nicely. And is now, I think, just diving back into that rhythm. He's got no traffic for quite some time. And he's probably not going to get some for a little bit longer as well, because they're going to be coming into pit lane, I would say, around about the 20-minute mark or 25-minute mark in this race. And of course, that's going to be around about 6 laps time. So for these boys, they're just now focusing on how this race does progress. And for Nepoteket, he's just holding on to that advantage for now.
Yeah, well, they've got about 20% virtual energy, the leaders, as well as the other cars such as Borgerson, currently sitting on 43%. So Borgerson can afford to take this a little bit further. His limiting factor only really being the tyres compared to his rivals. But yeah, teetering on the 20% mark between the hypercars. So we've got a few more laps left in it just yet, but eventually they will have to call it time. And I think Bouquet wants to get this done more than ever because he knows that. And if he's able to get ahead before the pit transfer window, then he's going to be in a very favourable position come second half.
Oh, he certainly will be, and we know he can get that strategy pulled off to a T. But they've got the same amount of energy at the moment, 22% to Bouquet and 23 for Nepoteket. So that'll be nothing more than probably half a lap in terms of difference there. And actually, Bouquet's dropped off massively heading up the hill into Erosion Radion. He's going to see himself drop over a second back for the first time in quite a while. And potentially, he's just sitting back, maybe cleaning off the tyres, maybe cooling down the engine as well here, Ben, regrouping to go for an attack a little bit later on, just before the end of this stint.
I think it's just about exactly as you said. Stay back, regroup, plan, and don't just throw your car in there. I think Bouquet, in this situation, has to make a choice. He's 0.7 of a second behind, so he either needs to push like heck, get himself back to the back of Nepoteket, and go for the send just before they go to pit, or hang back, focus on conserving your resource in order to shorten that pit stop time and undercut him in the pit lane.
Yeah, that certainly is going to be the strategy for Bouquet. And actually, we've had a DNF over the course of the past 5 laps in the GT3 categories. Aero for 0, and I think he's missed a right front tyre, in that one, so it's had a big off somewhere. So we are down to the 2 battling it out for the race lead in that division of Wilson and Rios. These two have been going at it for quite some time now, somewhat like we're seeing from Bouquet and Nepoteket, where the car behind has the pace. We know Rios has got the pace, not able to do anything with it, as we see Roland Sux now also coming to pit lane from the lead of the LMP2 class.
LMP2s are a little bit quiet. We haven't really been able to check in much on them, but that is simply because they are so far spaced, and we lost Vickers along with Lovrich fairly early on in the session. So it's just Sux, Cook and Wiesrock left on track, and right now they are all running in their own bubble. So the biggest impact that they can have on this race session is as a catalyst for combat between the other 2 classes. They brought Bouquet and Nepoteket together on multiple occasions, same for Wilson and Rios, to a different scale and different angle. But still, the point stands, is that LMP2 right now is serving more as the equivalent of a static character in a storybook, pushing the development of the other characters along, rather than making any big dramas themselves.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's just all about the LMP2s now being that little bit of a threat with the traffic. And now into the right-hander.
See, they've all gone into the pits in unison.
Oh, yes, they have. Wiesrock and Cook now also into pit lane. I think they've cut it very fine. I think a full tank can get you 17 laps in this race for the LMP2s, potentially 18. So they've really run those cars to the brink of running out of fuel. And for Roland Sux, he's going to be out well clear once again. And for Bouquet here, Ben, he's got closer. He's backed off and is recharged for another attack. He's got 3 more laps of fuel, I think, in the tank. So he's going to need to get that move done now if he wants to get it done on the circuit. As now the LMGT3s get involved, and Bouquet's been held up slightly but slows Nepoteket as Dan Wilson goes off the circuit. Could that invite Rios for the move? And here comes Bouquet into Blanchimont.
Here go, finally, push comes to shove. The 2 go side by side into Blanchimont now. It's going to be Bouquet who yields off just the tiniest bit, but it's only enough to keep his nose in and keep himself to the other side. Later on the brakes, ever so slightly, holds the apex for the bus stop chicane, puts the nose through, and jumping on that little bit later, that was what settled it. And Bouquet, after a long, patient wait, has finally been rewarded for his convictions. He's up into P1. Nepoteket is taking his previous position and is now going to have to get on the attack fast before the pit window.
Yes, he certainly will. And of course, these long straights are his best opportunity as we now head up the hill for Erosion Radion. And that was the perfect prime time for Mateo Bouquet to get that move done, and he's done it with flawless execution, or has he? Because here comes Nepoteket fighting back into the com. Is he close enough for the lunge? No, he's just going to sit behind. For Bouquet, this is where he can extend that lead and potentially withstand that pressure from Nepoteket, because he's oh so fast through that middle sector, and that Peugeot is really going to come alive now in that clean air.
You can see the Peugeot now is going to really be able to lean into its strengths. That later ability to brake, that almost ability to pirouette on the nose of the car. this is where it's all going to come alive, and I think now that he's out of dirty air, this is Bouquet's time to shine. Nepoteket built it for defense and for a little bit of combat, but ultimately Bouquet is now going to be in a world of his own, and he's already taking full advantage. 1.1 seconds, and it's not even been a full lap.
It certainly hasn't been. I think Nepoteket started to struggle potentially on tyres as well. As we now see Bouquet, that gap will slowly shrivel over the course of the next straight, but I wouldn't say by too much. And he has done this to sheer perfection. And this is the tactical mind we've seen time and time again from the Frenchman. He's just able to put himself in positions and read the race 20 minutes before it happens, and he just is able just to really read everything and how it's going to play out. Is now also Nepoteket held up behind Alexis Vriesvrock there, and drops that gap to now 2 seconds to Bouquet in front. It is now really going to be Bouquet's race to lose at this point, isn't it, Ben? And for the Frenchman, that genius, that tactician we all know and love, has certainly come to play once more.
Yeah, I wouldn't count Nepoteket out of the fight, though, by any stretch of the imagination. 2 seconds is recoverable, and I think that he might be trying to just maximize his advantage on resource. He was slightly higher in terms of virtual energy relative to the Peugeot. Even if by just a couple of percent, that could be a couple of valuable tenths. And if he's able to ignite the afterburners just a little bit more in that final stint, then that could serve him very well. But Bouquet is going to make full use of the open track now afforded to him. He's pushing that Peugeot 9X8 all the way to the ragged edge of performance. Those brakes glowing white hot at points as he's really giving it his all while he has it.
Yes, he certainly is. He's using everything he can. I think he's going to be coming into pit lane as well this time around. Will not have enough virtual energy to go round for another attempt. Nepoteket, I think, will just be in play to go for an extra lap, and that will be oh so crucial. 2.3 seconds is probably how much you'll save, thanks to, of course, putting less energy into the car. And it could be a very, very close pit exit here, couldn't it, Ben, between Bouquet and Nepoteket. And this strategy battle is well and truly on. But unfortunately for the Porsche, he's just dropping back so much. That gap now 3 seconds at the start of the sector. It was only 1.8.
Yep, and now we stand almost 3 seconds between the hypercar leaders. Meanwhile, Wilson, after that brief off-track excursion, and looks like a completely destroyed rear end, wingless, is now in the pit lane for an extended period of time. Rios stands alone on the circuit as he's going to have a pretty clean run to the finish by all accounts. Borgerson is coming out of the pit lane for the second time, as the rest of the field is going to be well on their way up the road. De Vries remains side of the road and ready for the Le Mans style entrance at any time.
Yeah, he certainly is. Whenever he wants to join back, he can certainly run across the circuit back in his car after a quick tea break.
Sounds like the scariest game of Frogger alive.
It really is. It is just a game of Crossy Road at this point for De Vries. But surprisingly, Bouquet's not come into pit lane. I think he was just able to conserve enough energy over the course of this one. He does seem to be doing a lot of Lyco through some of these corners. And this could be where Sebastian Nepoteket can fight back. Of course, with the Peugeot having to go a lot earlier onto the brakes, lift off well before he even touches those brakes. We could now see, of course, the Porsche driver come back into the fray. But through that middle sector, it's where he needs to capitalise on in the corners, and that Porsche is just not able to do so.
I wouldn't say it's Lyco for the sake of extending the time. I think it's Lyco purely out of necessity. Look at them both. 2% energy remains. They are taking this first stint to their very limit. And I think Bouquet is able to push harder for the same amount of energy relative to the Porsche, or at least his driving style is indicating that, but say 0.8% for Bouquet. He's really going to take it to the ragged edge now as Nepoteket just ticks over to 1. It's going to be very slim margins for the Peugeot. He might even coast into the pit lane on fumes, on full empty. But let's see, bus stop chicane, will he be able to hold it all together?
he's just going to be able to. He's really lifted off there. He was just, even before we got under the advertising board, he just completely got off the throttle. How he has brought that in, I do not know. That was fine margins indeed. And that is superb fuel management from Mateo Bouquet and for Nepoteket as well, for both of them to go so long in this race and a lap extra than Mika Patouche. They've both done really well to save as much energy as they did.
Yeah, so excellent stuff here. Of course, now both of them in the pit lane. Dan Wilson remains in the pit for an extended period. I think just having to take the repairs as they stand. But finally getting moving a lap later as Adam Rios has just finished his stop on normal time. The question is, as Bouquet and Nepoteket, they both rush to the pit lane exit. They're going to go literally side by side with each other, as that is going to be Nepoteket actually peeling back the 2 seconds that he lost in the pit lane alone. So they really are going to come out at the perfect time for each other. But taking a look at the virtual energy, they are even. So he's somehow managed to completely negate about 2.5 seconds despite them being on the same figures.
Well, for me, it's saying that Nepoteket's got about 5%, no, 6% less than Bouquet in virtual energy. And here comes Nepoteket to the inside line, into the comments. He's got to get the move done. The Porsche not known for being good on the brakes. He has gone deep. He's gone over the road. Cold brakes, cold tyres, and that's brought Bouquet back into that race lead. But look at this, Rios just getting in the way. A little bit of contact between Bouquet and Rios as they tried to pull to the inside line. Dan Wilson is also back on the road, so that might not help the Peugeot either. I think he might just be able to get this move done down into Pouon, but he's going to be held up massively now through into the Jackie X curve. And here comes Nepoteket once more to the inside line. He's going to be able to find a way through. No, just not able to do anything with it. But with that contact, there's some damage coming Bouquet's way, and that could certainly hinder the Peugeot's performance through the corners.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a shaky start there for Nepoteket, but he's still going to hold true. Nonetheless, cold tyres and cold brakes meant that initial misjudgment, but I think he's learned his lesson. Whereas Bouquet is still having to do the job of defending hard and not necessarily getting any break here.
No, it certainly is not. As we head up the hill once more through Belguim and into the bus stop chicane. Nepoteket, of course, needs to use this early stage of the stint to get by, I would say, on, of course, Mateo Bouquet. Use that superior straight line speed of the Porsche. And he now heads into the bus stop chicane. That gap 0.5 seconds. This is prime position for Sebastian, especially heading down the hill and having the full straight, the full run from the source downwards into Lecombe to get this move done. And out of the first corner we'll go. And look at that, Nepoteket setting himself up for the exit.
Yeah, it's all about positioning. And that also means positioning yourself for the best chances to get the overtake confirmed. So Nepoteket, he's 1.5 tenths of a second behind Bouquet. He's got a really good exit out of Eau Rouge and Radion. He peels to the left side. He's going to go for the send, but Bouquet tries to hold the narrow and hold the apex as hard as he can. Slightly later on the brakes as per for the Peugeot, and it's just enough to hold on to the position as they both continue to fight. Yellow flag coming out, trying to get to the exact source of that for the moment, but it doesn't look to be clear. And maybe Patouche, but it's tough to tell. Yellow flag, I think, actually is for De Vries, where he remains on the side of the course. I think that's been out basically permanently since he stopped.
It certainly has been, of course. With the car being there, the marshals must be getting somewhat tired waving their yellow flags. Of course, they have the electronic boards as well as, oh, I thought Bouquet went round there. The camera angle I was shown there from the game made it look like the Frenchman was going to be into a half spin all the way through Pouon, but he was able to keep the car facing in the right direction. And now heading down the hill into Stavolo, he's somewhat been able to streak clear of Nepoteket, but that's going to fall once more up into the bus stop chicane. And what I think Nepoteket is really going to be counting on if he can't get close enough again is that LMP2 traffic we can see on the minimap. I can see on the minimap heading up into the source. They'll catch those before the end of the race, and it might bring that Porsche straight back into contention.
Yeah, that is, of course, the wild card that brings everyone back in. It's the LMP2s and traffic in general. That tends to be the equalizer between multiple cars. That and the wet weather. Wet weather tends to be a massive question mark placed over the race, as other drivers do get a chance to really show their stuff. Last time we had a wet race here, it was a massive shake up to the order, and certainly is one of my favourite ways to spice up an evening.
It certainly is. It is exactly the way you want drivers to be tested. And they say the wet weather is the great equaliser. Of course, it all comes down to driver confidence. And that's how, of course, Bouquet was at Imola when he nearly got that victory. And unfortunately, an unusual strategy blunder from the Peugeot driver saw him just fall short. But yeah, that's where those drivers really are tested, in those wet weather conditions, especially the hypercar drivers. No traction control or ABS. It's just so difficult, especially in these big, powerful machines, to get the car out of the corners or even into them. And so far for Bouquet, here with 22 minutes left on the clock, he's still got that about 7/10 advantage over Nepo Tekit. Still plenty to play for during the rest of this race. But the other categories of LMGT3 and LMP2s, unless something drastic happens, their fates have already been sealed.
Yeah, so I think it is a case of fates being sealed, especially when you have slightly lower numbers owing to DNFs and a couple of tech issues here and there. It's all about just bringing it home. And I know that we've said that multiple times over this broadcast, but it rings true more than ever now that we effectively have 9 cars remaining on the course. Just bring it back. Continue your race, keep marching forward, and ultimately you will be rewarded handsomely, particularly for the likes of Rios and Wilson. Wilson with a massive crash, and then justifiably complaining about his luck that he's had during this season in general, but this is the chance to turn it around. Use the on-track opportunity of being P2 despite all of that. Take advantage, get the points in. That could be the slingshot.
They certainly can be, and of course, even though he's 83 seconds behind Rios, he can use this as valuable track time to get to grips more with the BMW, of course. For a majority of the LMGT3 challenge that we had, of course, on the Mondays, he was in the Aston Martin. So it's a big difference between those two cars, completely different aero philosophies. As you can see, Bouquet just trying to break the toe from Sebastian Nepo Tekit. But yeah, use this track time, use this momentum you'll gain from second place. Yes, there may only be 3 cars, but it's still a confidence boost. You know you've got pace as well to fight with these cars, because of course if it wasn't for that unfortunate incident, he'll still be battling with Adam Rios as it currently stands. So use that confidence, use that momentum, and use his track time to get to grips more of the car.
Really start to understand
it. Oh no, what's happened to Adam Rios? Oh yeah, he's dropping massively to Wilson.
He stopped on track.
And he stopped on the side of the road.
There's been a massive issue.
That's on the escape road of Lecom. So he's gone straight on at the corner, and he's somehow managed to park it up perfectly on the escape road. We're talking about Dan Wilson finishing second. He might be the only finisher in LMGT3 and take this race victory.
Wilson now.
Oh no, he's going again.
What I say, Rios is back on the track. I was about to say that Wilson is the poster child for resilience, for perseverance here. Despite the difficult hand he's been dealt, he continues, he keeps going, and he's being rewarded with P2, potentially a fight and a second chance at P1 for it.
He certainly does. Of course, Wilson, even in the LMGT3 challenge, was always won unless there was race-ending damage to that car, and of course with the LMGT3 only being 30-minute races, it was very much a lost rear wing, that's race-ending, but he was always one to carry on and just to keep pushing forwards. And now we're going to see him potentially reap that rewards of the determination that he shows. He's certainly someone that will never give up in the face of adversity. And for Rios, he's actually really struggling. I think he might have a tech issue with the wheel because he's weaving a lot down the straights.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, it makes me question exactly what's going on behind the scenes there. But on the other side of things, I say we do see Nepoteket now regaining a good chunk of the time that it previously lost to Bouquet. Was as high as 1.3 seconds, but is ebbing and flowing, because as soon as he seems to peel it back, he's losing it again. So what is going on behind that Porsche? He's still in for a good result, an improvement from last time, 3rd to 2nd if he finishes where he is. But I think the scarier prospect for him right now is, even with that improvement, looking at the wider championship at play, this could be what tips the favours for Bouquet. 3 wins on the trot if he brings it home tonight. He might just swing the lead of the championship.
He certainly might indeed. I think the issue is that for Nepoteket, even though Bouquet may have been held up ever so slightly down the Kemmel Straight, he was then held up into the braking zone of the Com. So that's where it ebbs and flows, and it's the swings and roundabouts of the traffic. And of course, it's still going to catch up to some by the end of this race. And I think Rios might have somewhat got his issue under control. So I think he's going to be slowly... No, he's letting off down the straight. There is a big issue here for Adam Rios. And unfortunately for him, I think we are going to see him fall out of contention for this race victory, as the issue that he has, for some reason, could potentially be a wheel issue or an in-game issue, as unfortunately seen his charge for the race victory come to an end, because it's going to be a matter of moments before Dan Wilson gets by.
I mean, his speed isn't necessarily much lower, but he's just... Actually, no, saying that, he is running quite slow through some of these corners and some of these sections. So that means that there's either a damage or technical issue, or just simply maybe he's just running low on... Maybe he's running low on fuel, or trying to gauge exactly what's happening. But it just looks like Rios is a sitting duck with a quickly approaching BMW.
He certainly is. I think this is a technical issue for him, because of course we saw him off at the side of the road, and it's just seemed to be that ever since then he's not been able to drive at full potential or full speed even down the straights. So I don't know here for Rios. It's really disappointing to see. As you can see now, heading up through Blanchimont, he's not able to put full throttle down. There is some damage on the rear of the car, but it's only yet very faint yellow, so that usually doesn't mean too performance impacting. I want to say this is a wheel issue for Adam Rios, and it's really disappointing to see, because he's driven so well. He's been pretty much mistake-free, and at the final hurdle, he's seen himself, unfortunately, falter.
But then, look at him, he's still going. Again, perseverance will be rewarded. And Wilson could see himself get as high as the top 5 coming out of this. Max points would land him right alongside Staging in the championship. P5, another M4 driver, will be able to, again, really capitalize on the wider environment of the championship right now. 15 minutes to go, and currently it looks to be that the 2 leaders continue fighting. Bouquet and Nepoteket are where our eyes are firmly trained. Borgerson is going to be in the box for a 3rd time, and then Rios and Wilson, the sole duelists in LMGT3, fighting for top honours, as that's going to be Dan Wilson rapidly closing in as well. And just coming out of the Kemmel Straight, looks like these two are united now.
Nepoteket as well is looking for a move here on Mateo Bouquet. He's really closed up to the back of the Peugeot, and the Porsche looking to the outside line this time around into the common. Before he even hit the brakes, he's just able to streak clear, and he moves back to the front of the field with 14 minutes and 10 seconds remaining. But Bouquet will fight this one back. He'll want to get this position away from his championship rival, but for Sebastian Nepoteket, he's just holding that upper hand, heading through the Bruxelles hairpin into the jackets, cover, little slide, a little wobble from the rear end, just to show how much these two are both pushing. But through this middle sector here, Ben, there's not many overtaking opportunities, and it will need an immense run out of pull on into Campus Corner if we're going to see the Frenchman dictate his way back through.
Jose Bouquet is still very much in close quarters, so we're going to see a bit of a repeat, I think, of what happened last time. And looking at the energy readings as well, it looks like Bouquet has a fair bit more in the tank compared to Nepoteket on this run. So maybe he's banking on those final 2 to 3 minutes where he's able to open up the taps fully compared to the Lyco of Nepoteket might having to be done. It's all going to be the strategy, and I think Bouquet's banking on that late game, but we'll have to wait and see, as we've got potentially about 10 more minutes before we really see the cards start to fall.
Yes, we certainly do. And Adam Rios, I think his issue might have just magically fixed itself. Was he potentially waiting up for Dan Wilson to have a little bit of a squabble to the end of the race? Because if so, that is high-level sportsmanship there from Rios, as we now see Richard Cook going by and potentially Nepoteket as well. This is going to be very risky from Sebastian. He's going to get boxed in, and this might give Bouquet now the opportunity. Heading down into a Rouge and Radial. Just look at the sheer amount of cars on the circuit, just trying to find a way through. Wilson is going to be there as well. Cook finds his way through. Nepoteket and Bouquet just able to get past all three of them before we hit the hill, as now we see Bouquet tucked into that slipstream, but he just doesn't have the straight line speed of the Porsche, and he just won't get close enough for that attacking move into the into the Com, and he sees himself staring at the back of the Porsche once more. It's a repeat of that first stint, and for Rios, I genuinely believe here, Ben, that he was just waiting up for Wilson.
Yeah, it looks like it, and I can see the wisdom in that, honestly. As much as I could stand here as a race engineer or a team principal and think, why are you conceding that gap? Just as racers, just as competitors, you want to have a bit of a fight on the track. So I fully respect Rios' decision to back off, just to join Wilson on the track and have a bit of camaraderie, have a bit of back and forth. Don't be afraid to liven up the race, and of course bring us the entertainment from watching here behind the commentary box, and of course those watching at home. I respect it on a sportsman level. As much as pure performance is concerned, you want to lock in the win. Rios, fair enough. I can't knock it.
Neither can I. Of course, when you're that far in front, it does get very I wouldn't say boring, but you do start to lose focus, and you do start to make mistakes because you're not focused on the race. You know you got the win in the bag, and you're just wanting to bring this one home. You just want time to pass by as quickly as it possibly can. So, especially with the field so small, and of course them two being the only ones out on a circuit in the LMGT3s, it's a beautiful thing to see from the pair of them, as Dan Wilson is actually being put under so much pressure here from Rios, who's going to look potentially to the inside line. Yes, he is, into the bus stop chicane. To the inside goes Rios, but just not close enough to get the lunge done. But he might get the move on the exit, the good old up and under, all about focusing on there. But no, not close enough. That BMW just seeming that little bit more nimble into the bus stop chicane. And Bouquet was only a 10th behind, heading in to La Source, comes out of it, and Upper Rouge and Radial 7/10 behind Nepoteket, and still nowhere near close enough for an attacking move.
Yeah, so the proximity is everything here, and it is going to be a bit of a waiting game. We are coming to the final 10 minutes now, of course, as we will be seeing the climax of tonight's round at Spa. Of course, looking forward as well, when you do have the other races to consider. Chances are running out, but as far as tracks go, Qatar, Kota and Sebring, I gotta say, it's a pretty good selection. In particular, I'll admit, I do have a soft spot for Sebring. It is one of those tracks for me that has a lot of personal weight. Even if it isn't the best track out there and it has its quirks, I think it has a lot of character, and it's certainly got a soft spot for me.
Oh yeah, I love Sebring as well. I feel it's a real driver's circuit, is Sebring. It's kind of like an Imola, where it's not all about the car and being able to capitalise on that, because it's very unique as a circuit, and you've got to be at one with your car, because of course you've got to have that confidence and you've got to have that bravery at Sebring, and it's just one of the staples of American motorsport. And probably that and Indianapolis might be my favourite circuits in all of American motor circuits. So as we head up into the bus stop chicane with Bouquet, just not close enough. And for Nepoteket as well here, I think with this victory, one of his drop rounds might change, and he might actually get a race win back in return of taking the 3rd place that he got in last week's round. So this will work out in his favour, but Bouquet is still applying a load of pressure heading down the hill now into Rouge.
Yes, he's just going to keep the pressure high, and like we saw in the first stint of this race, the most important thing here for Bouquet is picking his moments. He's been building up pressure lap on lap on lap. Ever since Nepoteket got ahead of him, he's refused to relent, and he even gone for a little bit more aggressive play than we saw him in stint 1. So he knows he has the pace, and we saw at the end of the stint that he knows he can get Nepoteket at the dying moments of the stint. So he's very much banking on that, although I do wonder if it will come to pass that they actually do have enough to where they get to that point. 19%, 7.5 minutes to go. That is about 4 laps, give or take. And I wonder how long this virtual energy is going to really last in the hands of these two as they squabble.
Same here. I think they're just potentially going to make it to the line. Their best lap, well, their last lap was a 2-minute 2. So if they cross the line with 7 minutes remaining, they will have a total of 3 more racing laps at this one. So I think they'll just be all right on the virtual energy. And oh, that's Bouquet going wide out of the curve to Paul Freya. That is going to be Bouquet going wide and hemorrhaging a load of time now heading up the hill. And he's also got to slow down. So that could be the race victory sealed for Sebastian Nepoteket.
Just like that, push comes to shove, and one mistake getting exacerbated by the pressure that is currently held on both sides of the coin. Bouquet now down to 2 seconds worth of gap. And that's going to be quite the uphill battle to muster. He's going to have to put in nothing short of 110% in order to really extract the maximum and hopefully have a chance to fight back once more.
Yes, hopefully he'll be able to find that time he needs. As Adam Rios in all of this has been able to get past Dan Wilson, and that gap now 3.7 seconds. So he's been able to recover that race lead and be able to push on. And yeah, now for Matteo Bouquet, he's got a big chunk of time to find against Nepoteket, but we saw he was so much quicker through that middle sector, and arguably in the clean air he probably would have been about half a second quicker. So there is still plenty of time in this race for him to fight back, but it's all just down to, can he capitalize on Nepoteket's really slow speed? And just look at that, he's found about 0.2 of a second through the Bruxelles hairpin alone. So this might not be over yet, but it certainly has put the ball in the courts of Sebastian Nepoteket if he's just able to push on to the end.
I think this is Nepoteket's race to lose, similar to Bouquet's at the turn of the pit window. They both are running a little bit slower relative to their peak times, but I think Nepoteket is running slower out of the two, and in fact is dropping a couple of tenths here and there as we go through towards the end of the second sector, and they're now going to be making their way towards, of course, the likes of Blanchimont and the bus stop. Bouquet is pushing, there is zero doubt, and I think in a way that's what he was banking on the extra energy for, as a safety net if nothing else. We're looking about 6% burn per lap, and there will be very much running to the line with scraps of energy left.
Yeah, they certainly will be running to the end, and Nepoteket will certainly be the one struggling. Look at that gap now, 1.3 seconds. He's found 7/10 over the course of the last lap. So he is certainly looking at finding that time. Last lap for Nepoteket, 2 minute 2.1. No, that's for Bouquet, sorry. For Nepoteket, a 2 minute 2.6. Actually, half a second found for Sebastian there. But over the next few laps, that could be oh so crucial. If he can keep up this pace here, Ben, come that final lap, he'll be all over the back of the Porsche.
Yeah, but it's also got to be about getting past. Getting to the back is one thing, but getting past is a whole different ball game. And some aggressive defending from Sebastian could be the difference between him walking away with that P1 and that full return to form versus Bouquet getting a triple win and undercutting him to take the championship lead heading into Qatar.
Yeah, it certainly does, as we now head down through the hill once more. Of course, not much time left in this race, only 3 minutes. We really are in the dying embers, and we are in that crucial phase of this one. And for Sebastian Nepoteket, he holds a 1.4 second lead, and that is going to be ever shrinking. I think we're going to get 2 more at the end of this one. I think we're just going to get to the line before that 2 minute and 2 second mark, unless something drastic happens and we see a big drop in pace by Nepoteket. But he can't really afford that at this point here, Ben. He doesn't have that advantage to back the pace up, because Bouquet will see himself through surely. So there's going to be 2 more laps, and that is going to be oh so crucial to the Porsche's race victory and his chances of being able to hold on to the energy.
Yeah, so last moments of this race are going to be pretty telling as we head on to what is going to be the penultimate lap of the race. We have 10% energy for Nepoteket, 13% energy for Bouquet, so about I would say half a lap worth of extra push versus a maybe bit of lift and coast for Nepoteket's end. It will be coming up onto the end with about 2% energy down if we're assuming 6 per lap spent, and I'm sure that's worrying the Porsche driver.
Certainly is. From what I can see, the information I have, he has 2.1 laps of energy as it currently stands, compared to Bouquet's 3 laps of energy. So for Matteo, he certainly does have the upper hand in this one when it comes to that margin to the end of this race. But Nepoteket can still just about get this one to the line. But we know that Peugeot is oh so fast through the middle sector on the past lap. Was never getting an accurate reading of how much he found compared to the Porsche, because Nepoteket must have gone a little bit wide and invalidated the lap. This now means everything for Bouquet. He's got to give it his all. He's got to keep pushing here, doesn't he, Ben? As that gap is teetering on falling under a second.
Teetering on the edge, to be sure. But as we get into that final phase, a quick pit stop and tour of the rest of the field. As Borgerson, he has stayed in the pit lane for a significant amount of time, and I think that is him done. So technically it is 8 finishes out of tonight's race and 1 of attrition. It has definitely been. But we have Nepoteket and Bouquet continuing the fight. Patouche silently in the background, chugging along and getting that silent P3. Great stuff to see, because this is going to be where he is in good contention for points, even if he's not necessarily surrounded by racers. Meanwhile, Souks, Cook and Wiesrock, your 3 LMP2s on the circuit, have all been isolated from each other, but still likewise chugging along and getting solid points, being respectful racers across the board as they respect the track that they're on, with Rios taking to the inside to allow, I think that's Souks, to go past, and then Dan Wilson much further away. So despite the 2 cars converging, it is coming a case of just not being able to push in the same way in terms of the BMW.
Certainly indeed, and this might now mean it's not all said and done for that LMP, that hypercar, that LMP-H battle at the front of the field, as Dan Wilson might get a little bit involved here. It all depends. When does Nepoteket catch up to the back of the BMW? Wilson just heading out of the Jackie X curve, and this is going to be oh so close. And for Bouquet, he's now 4 tenths behind. So if all it takes is 1 slow moment from the BMW to hold up that Porsche, we could see the Frenchman find his way through. But no, Nepoteket just is able to make it to the campus corner and clear the BMW, but Bouquet is still over the back. You can see how much he's pushing the car, dancing with every small tap of the throttle. He's looking for it to Stabilo, just not going to be close enough. Will Nepotec be able to hold on from under all this pressure up into the bus stop chicane, because Matteo Bouquet will be giving it absolutely everything. He'll go for it no matter what. He's got the slipstream and he's using it up into Blanchimont. The Frenchman and the Porsche driver going to be squabbling. This is for the championship. These are key moments in the championship. It's a hard defense from Nepotec. Bouquet to the outside line, locks up that front left. Rios goes off the road to get out of the way of these guys, but it's going to be Sebastian Nepotec back to winning ways here in Belgium, and this is going to be a way to do it. He crosses the line to win the Belgium race, and it was a race full of action-packed moments between the pair, and for Sebastian Nepotec, that is oh so crucial in his championship implications.
I mean, to the both of them, take a bow. What a brilliant show for us, start to finish. Nothing quite like it have we seen. And even in the midst of a thinner grid that we've seen tonight, one thing that is without a doubt is these two championship rivals have brought us the best on-track combat that we have seen all season, if not in the history of WSC. But here you go, there's Patush, the last hypercar finisher, making his way through as the dueling Rios and Wilson conclude their fight. Patush going for a little bit of style points and I think reversing over the pit lane right there, or the start-finish line. I'm sure the stewards, I think the stewards wouldn't have taken a liking to that one, but given we had a part of De Vries playing spectator for a good while, I think that their arms have got tired and they called it a day anyway.
Yeah, they certainly have. His feed for it will be our final finish across the line, and that will be a podium finish for Alexis as he crosses the line now. And also a 1-2 for Rios and Dan Wilson, certainly going to be their best results of the season. But that is exactly how they would want to get things done. But for Sebastian Nepotec, a crucial moment in the championship. But with 3 rounds to go, it's still all to play for, and Bouquet could fight back. But around a circuit, which I said he could make his amend to the top, he could return to the top step and find his feet once more. He certainly has delivered on that. It may have been a difficult one, but he sees himself reign supreme here in the Ardennes Forest.
And there you go, our final standings as the rest of the track comes to a close. Nepotec, Bouquet and Patush for Hypercar take that 3. And then Souks along with Cook and Wiesrock for the LMP2s, followed by Rios and Wilson. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of technical issues with some cars and a couple of drivers who weren't able to quite make it home or make it to the track. But even so, it's been a pleasure to watch these racers on the course tonight, and this is where we are going to say goodbye for now. So make sure that you are tuned in for this time next week, where we will potentially be heading to Qatar. Of course, if you want updates on everything to do with the season and GRDC's affairs and offerings, be sure to subscribe, be sure to get involved, check out our SimGrid pages to keep up with all the action, review the results for yourselves, and with that we will see you next time out as Qatar awaits next week. Take care, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and